The reason immigration is so costly, illegal immigration, is because people coming from other countries that don't have skills, and we know of cases in Colombia and Venezuela where some of the worst people, they emptied out their prisons, they can't take care of them anymore, push them into the United States. Those guys are not going to go get a job at Walmart or Home Depot.
Immigrants, illegal aliens, I'm going to say the name, the word, who are taking their foreign flag and standing in the middle of the town square, waving the foreign flag from their foreign-born nation that they rejected in an effort to come to America, and waving it to take a stand and say, you owe me. I came here illegally and you owe me, and how dare you deport me? That's absolute insanity.
We are not talking about people who are not made in the image of God. They are made in God's image. We are recognizing the justice of the issue. There is a rationality in this issue. We have to recognize that there is a scarcity of resources. We have to recognize that given where we are right now, this cannot go on in perpetuity.
We're defending the wicked. We're defending the lawbreaker while having no compassion for those who've suffered under the hand of these lawbreakers, suffered under the violent acts that have been committed against them, even to the point of death. There's no care, there's no compassion.
And welcome to the Give Me Liberty podcast at the Standing for Freedom Center at Liberty University, where we defend life, liberty, and truth to ensure the foundations of freedom exist for the next generation. I'm your host, Ryan Helfenbein. I am also joined by Freedom Center contributor and writer, author, Virgil Walker. Welcome, brother.
Glad to be here, man.
Glad that you're here in this brand new studio.
It's amazing. Absolutely looks amazing. I was commenting when I came in. Whatever these guys did, I need them to come to my space in my home and work this out, because this is really nice.
Our production team is awesome.
Yeah, obviously.
They do a great job. And so this thing has come together over I think a little over a month between all of the traveling we've done. Little like bits and pieces have been carved out and put together, and so we're excited about this.
Amazing.
The reason we're doing this episode is that we have a new Theology of Politics that's coming out, a case for mass deportation, the immigration crisis as a national emergency. Even as we record this, the beginning of the idea of this Theology of Politics came around November, December of last year. President Trump won the election. I knew that this was going to be a signature part of his policy moving forward. This has been a signature part of his policies going all the way back to when he just said he was going to run for president. Right. Even as early as 2012, he was talking about this issue when Barack Obama was president. So President Trump, one of the signature pieces of the Big Beautiful Bill was allotting or appropriating more than $170 billion for ICE to fight illegal immigration and to create a means not only to lock down the border, not only to enforce the border, but to mass deport millions of illegal immigrants who have come over into this country. They broke the law. They broke the law to get here.
Everybody said this couldn't be done.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. When I think about our conversations going back, I trace them all the way back to October.
Yeah.
Because this was actually before the election when you and I were talking on the phone and we were having conversations about this important issue. And if I remember, you correct me if I'm wrong, your conversation around that was, Christians need to get this right.
Yes. We
need to be thinking about this rightly. Right now, there's this confusion about compassion and justice and how we navigate that. We kind of seem to, as evangelicals, seem to err on the side of compassion, right, and ignore the justice aspect and the protection that's needed for our own citizenry. So I remember us talking about this back and forth, and you telling me, hey, we've got to write a piece. And I said, yeah, let's do it. And then again, schedules get busy and all of that. But it was still a process of us thinking through what we need to do to put this together and address both issues. How do we stay away from looking xenophobic, right? With regard to issues related to justice, and then on the other end, how do we utilize compassion, leverage it, but at the same time don't abuse it,
Right.
and really cause more harm to our citizens here in the United States than anything. So
It's fascinating to me, but the perversion of the social justice movement that for so long has been destroying our churches, weakening our institutions. So many people are viewing immigration through the lens of social justice and not understanding biblical justice. And so oftentimes when people are talking about compassion, it is only for the immigrant only.
That's a great
seldom
point.
ever is it for their neighbor.
Yep.
Seldom ever is it for members of their own church.
Right.
It's not for the Kate Steinleys of the world.
No.
It's not for the Laken Rileys of the world.
No.
It's not for 100,000 Americans who have died as a result of the fentanyl epidemic.
Yep.
It's not as a result. It's not the 350,000 estimated children that have been smuggled across the border, unaccompanied minors.
Right. In fact, what's happened with the social justice movement and its pervasiveness throughout evangelicalism is it's actually caused people to actually ignore all of the things that you said in an effort to embrace compassion and quote unquote social justice. It's devoid of biblical justice. It's devoid of righteousness according to God's word. It's devoid of anything that looks like the nature of God and how He would operate and function in society, or should, as Christians, how we should function in society as a result of our relationship with Him.
Yes, and so God hates the shedding of innocent blood. God hates and detests people that would prey upon children. God is an avenger of the innocent. And when we're talking about children, I think a lot of times in which the way this is framed, it's around dreamers. It's around those who have lived in the United States for a really, really long time. I don't want to take anything away from that argument right now. I'm not trying to talk about that.
Sure.
That what is often ignored is that you have hundreds of thousands of children who are essentially modern slaves. They have been brought into the United States, but some of them to be sex workers, some of them to work as slave labor, some of them, and they cannot, their whereabouts cannot be tracked or found.
Right.
This border crisis has created a huge gap in justice. And so people are not recognizing where the true problems are.
Right.
Christians in particular have been told, essentially, compassion only works one way,
Right.
and that is for the alien and the stranger, using passages out of the Old Testament, never mind their original purpose or meaning and how they're applied to the law or the Old Covenant.
Right.
And by the way, that would be great to use those in arguments for naturalization or assimilation. Those are never used for those purposes, but instead it's about bringing everyone into the United States, regardless of where they come from, what their creed or religion is, what their worldview is, and what their intentions are. Whether or not they're going to do this nation harm is never factored into that equation.
Right. And the issue with that is you raise the issue on the side of citizens who aren't, or people rather who are not citizens, right? Those who come here illegally, who may mean us harm, or perhaps in the process of coming here are harmed, right?
Right.
The other thing that we're not even thinking about is the national security issues.
Right.
Right. We have terrorist organizations that are entering the country. We don't know who they are. We don't know their whereabouts. We don't know what they intend for our country. And what it opens up is a problem for our citizenry. We don't know what's going to happen or where it's going to happen. We don't know who's coming in and who's going out or any of those things. And just from a standpoint of national security, we as a country, as a sovereign nation, should know who's entering and who's not.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the first Trump administration, national headlines that the consulate of China was being shut down in Houston, and you hear about these secret police stations all around the country. You have military age men whose whereabouts are not accounted for, that are representing other nations and other interests. Some of them are literally representing terrorist organizations that are here with absolute nefarious intent. They're not here. They're not coming in view of a better job or more income or to live the American dream. They're here for one purpose and one purpose alone. That is to destroy the country from within. And so China is doing it, and then at the same time, more recently in the military intervention in Iran, what was widely circulated is the fear of sleeper cells in the United States, loyal to Iran, terrorist organizations that are being funded to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars, that they could, at the very least, commit acts of subterfuge, espionage, or acts of terror and kill innocent life. That is still a threat.
It is.
And so, again, all of that goes back to we have a crisis at the border, and we are talking about a case, a Christian, a biblical case for mass deportation.
And the reason why this is important is because while folks don't want to admit it or not, we were founded upon Christian principles as a nation. And many of the people who are still consider themselves evangelical are informed in some way by a biblical case, right? They may not have a biblical worldview per se in the way that you and I understand and define that, but they are informed to some degree. The issue of compassion, where does that come from? They want to be compassionate because of how they've been raised, the Christian upbringing perhaps that they had. Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. And so those kinds of issues are the cause for us to think through these things. And it's incredibly important for Christians to have a response, an answer for these kinds of issues.
Amen. So let's get into it. One of the things that when I'm thinking through the problem, you have to know how big this scale is, and what are we talking about. One of the things, when you look at the United States around the time of the turn of the century, of the 20th century, it's crazy to think we're halfway through the first half of the 21st century. But in the first half, halfway through the first half of the 20th century, there were many legal immigrants who came through Ellis Island. They came all the way around the world. Many of them, though, came from European nations, Catholic nations. And one of the biggest challenges of immigration at that time was social and cultural and religious cohesion in the United States. And what I'm talking about is stuff that we would all roll our eyes at right now. You say, well, wait, in that early time, what was the big crisis? You have a huge Muslim population, maybe Hindu, Buddhist. No. Catholics and Protestants. Like the good old days when it was just Catholics and Protestants killing one another and not the rest of the world. So in that period of time, you had millions of immigrants from European countries that were the southern part of Europe, so it wasn't primarily Britain or the Netherlands, but from Catholic countries that were coming in, Italy, Ireland,
Irish Catholics,
Irish famine and all of that. Many Irish fought in the Civil War, and you think about the pockets of Middle America, especially west of Appalachia. Many Irish Catholic immigrants immigrated there. I'm trying to remember the name of the town in Kentucky, but the first archbishop for the Catholic Church in the interior of the United States, west of Appalachia, resided in rural Kentucky, and that at that time that was a frontier. And so there was a time in which, in that point in America in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, there was a concern that you have so many immigrants foreign born, they're not going to be able to naturalize properly, they're not going to be able to assimilate into our culture, and we were a Protestant nation. Now, creedally, we weren't Protestant in the sense that you had to adopt the Westminster Catechism in order to become a U.S. citizen, but Protestant in our orientation, in terms of understanding our constitutional order and the framework there. We did not have the Establishment Clause, very clear. We have no established state religion at the federal level, but many states had a confession of faith.
They did.
And Maryland was the only Catholic colony. The rest were Protestant.
Yes.
We love our Catholic friends.
Yes.
welcome to the United States. It's wonderful. You're an American citizen.
But the issue was twofold. One, it was definitely religion, but it was assimilation. As they're coming over, what are they assimilating? Are they becoming American citizens?
That's right.
And early 20th century, there was more of that obviously than there is today.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's what was of primary importance. You had men like Walter Rauschenbusch, right? And the social gospel there in the East Coast, right? Out of Hell's Kitchen, New York.
That's right.
And the embrace of the idea that no, there's no assimilation necessary.
Yes.
They just need to come and be a part, and we've got to figure out how taxpayers, right? How others can help in the care and well-being of people who were coming from a foreign-born state and place.
That's 100% right. Yeah. So in the early part, 1910s, 1920s, there was a push. There was the temperance movement to rid of alcohol, the women's suffrage movement, that the 19th Amendment was being passed. There was a lot of social change that was happening, first wave feminism, all of that. But then there was also a push in 1924. We got to shut down the border.
Yes.
And so that was one of the first key in sort of modern times. Yep. You had trains, you had planes, you had automobiles. And at that point in modern time, they were saying, we've got to change the policy on immigration in order to ensure that we have law and order, and then we have social cohesion.
Yeah, it was the Johnson-Reed Act. What it did in essence was just say, listen, we've got to absorb these people. Like we've got all these immigrants who've come from foreign-born places and spaces. We've got to figure out how to make sure that they're Americans. Right. We were at that point overrun with folks coming to Ellis Island and to other spaces and places, and the idea was simply, how do we cause these folks to have an American culture rather than these pockets of different groups that kind of hold to themselves and do their own kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So juxtapose that with right now. Mm-hmm. So we have a case of something that happened then, 100 years ago, 101 as of this year, and that's what they decided to do. Now it's estimated that we have over 11 million. Some are saying as much as 20 or 25 million.
I've heard that number as well.
We have at the very least estimated 15% of the United States foreign-born, but some as high as 20 or even 25% foreign-born.
Yeah.
That is, the people living in 1924 couldn't have assumed. It would blow their minds that this is even a debate.
Yeah.
The fact that they shut down the country then versus the fact that this is the idea that American citizens would be trying to stop federal agents in the performance of their duty to the Constitution.
That there are sanctuary cities.
That's right.
That there are sanctuaries. That there are immigrants, illegal aliens. I'm going to say the word, who are taking their foreign flag and standing in the middle of the town square, waving the foreign flag from their foreign-born nation that they rejected in an effort to come to America, and waving it to take a stand and say, you owe me. I came here illegally and you owe me, and how dare you deport me? That's absolute insanity.
Yeah.
And it's got to stop.
Crazy. There was you and I saw this just recently, but there was a candidate for mayor in Minneapolis. Okay, this is Tim Walz State, one of the most radical states in the country. They have been voting left, since before time began. In 1984, in the wave election with Ronald Reagan, it was the one state that was blue. And like, what? But anyway, I don't want to digress. They have a Somalian candidate, and in a speech that he gave, his whole purpose behind his candidacy is loyalty to the Somalian nation, the Somalian people. Yes. His whole argument before the voters and taxpayers in Minneapolis is that by voting for me, I want to build a stronger bridge and a connection to the Somalian nation. Yeah. That might actually get him the nomination in the election.
Yeah.
In 2025, what's strange about because of social justice and deconstruction and critical race theory and all of these other things, socialism, everyone, there's this hatred towards anything that is American, and this love and an anything goes kind of mentality towards anything else that's non-American.
The fact that he was able to say that and maintain time on a microphone is absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that that's not the loudest record scratch for everybody in the room that would cause them to go, what? What did he say? Is mind-numbing.
Right.
The idea that in our day and time, someone could step on a podium and declare their loyalty to a foreign-born community and a foreign-born nation prior to any connection to the United States is absolutely, utterly baffling. But that's where we are today.
Yes.
And that's why, I think that's why what we're doing with this walkthrough is so critical.
Yeah. And so we have to be honest as Christians in understanding the times that we're living in. Mm-hmm. And so when we're thinking about compassion, it needs to be viewed through the lens of Scripture. Mm-hmm. It absolutely needs to be dialed into the present injustices that we're seeing right now.
Absolutely.
And so there's a mythology that's being presented for most Christians when it comes to the alien and the stranger, that essentially those that walk among us in the United States have committed no wrong, including violating national laws of sovereignty when it comes to the borders.
I think the problem is no one currently sees crossing the border as a violation of any federal law.
Right.
That's the issue. Right. And we've got to stop there, because the idea is, they crossed the border, so what's the big deal?
Yeah.
That's what's happening in the mind of the Christian. And thereafter, since they've dismissed that piece, they've moved on to, well, how do we care for them? They're the ones who are needing help. How do we properly care for them? And all of that is wrong thinking. We've got to stop, pause, and go back and rewind.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so right now in the United States, it's something like $150 billion a year illegal immigration is costing U.S. taxpayers. Mm-hmm. That's everything from housing to healthcare to free education to food, all kinds of other kinds of social services, welfare programs, and not to mention law enforcement, prisons that are overrun, all kinds of emergency service. It overwhelms the system when you have millions of people that are from another place.
And nobody really feels that outside of border states. Right. So Texas has been feeling that pain forever.
My whole childhood.
Right.
My whole life.
Right.
Virgil, I lived in Texas, grew up in Plano. We saw it all the time. And that was just kind of a normal part of that experience. Now, I'm going to say this, that for the most part, people are hardworking.
Sure.
They are looking for opportunity. And we're talking about immigrants coming from Catholic countries, south of the border. Many of them are far more developed and they're not trying to come to kill everyone.
No.
That's not exactly that's not the situation there. But it is a problem when you have absolutely nothing in the law that is being enforced, nothing that is standing in the way. So anybody who has a nefarious intent and intends us harm
can leverage that.
Will leverage it and hijack that system in order to accomplish their
Well, let's go back to this. The overrun systems in Texas and other border states who've been feeling this for decades, who've been pleading for the federal government to do more. Even when they invoke their own state laws to initiate just a downplay, a drainage, if you will, or a stoppage of all of the people that are coming in, they're viewed as xenophobic. They're viewed as racist. But what's happened here, at least prior to Trump coming in, the governor wisely packed those folks up on buses and move them to some of those liberal states and spaces where folks are saying, "Oh no, we welcome
Greg Abbott,
we'd welcome that." And what they found out really quickly was their citizenry had the same kind of response and reaction.
That's exactly right. So when you're partying in the Hamptons, for example, now you voted for this, right? You wanted people to come over the border. You didn't care. People that live in gated communities in Palo Alto, the big tech
sanctuary cities like Chicago, right? New York,
that's right.
L.A.,
that's right.
Right.
And what's ironic about the whole thing is when it comes to Mexican drug cartels, MS-13, and all the rest, they own those cities. The sanctuary policies are not just the ideas of Democrats. Those are being promoted by people who absolutely want to create crime rings that are permanent. It's like the mafia.
Absolutely.
It's no different than Prohibition was in the 1930s. The Al Capones of Mexico can get to the, an interface with politicians in blue states and blue cities in order to get what they want out of this. These guys are operating outside of the law.
Yes.
But don't think for a second that it's just Ben and Jerry's ice cream that is promoting this. Right. I think a lot of American Christians think that this is just ice cream.
Right.
That it's really just kindness and it's sweetness.
Right.
And it's about caring for the alien and the stranger, but they're not understanding that the devil is in this.
Right. They're not understanding sovereignty. They're not understanding the rule of law. They're not understanding national security. None of those things are being considered in this process. What's interesting, and I know this isn't the area of our conversation, but what's interesting is seeing what's happening in Mexico. With Americans who are showing up there,
right.
And their pushback because Americans are bringing their money, they're coming in legally, but they're concentrating in pockets in Mexico, and Mexican nationals, rightly so, don't want that. Why? Because they disrupt the culture there.
Yeah.
They're increasing the prices there, and it's causing their lives to be more difficult. So they're saying, let's at least slow, if not stop, the flow of Americans who are going to Mexico. I say that only to say it is a natural response for a person to feel like the place where they are, there should be some national sovereignty that takes place, and that the decisions about bringing others into the country should be made by the people who are in that country facing the impact of those who are coming in.
That's right. When we talk about the Bill of Rights in the Constitution, that is for American citizens. These are inalienable rights. They're enumerated rights, but they're articulated so clearly for American citizens. There is no absolute right to enter someone else's country.
No.
There is no biblical case for an absolute right to enter someone else's country. For the longest time, the evangelical left, and it doesn't matter if you're, say, Jim Wallace, Ron Sider, Russell Moore, David French, there's all kinds of people that have promoted this idea that Jesus was this illegal immigrant.
Right.
That by leaving, or an undocumented immigrant, it's maybe a more clever way that they've phrased it, but because they know they technically can't say illegal.
No.
But Jesus and his parents fled the persecution of King Saul, and by fleeing that persecution, they went over to, say, perhaps Alexandria. There's an Anne Rice novel on Christ, Lord of Africa, and that maybe he lived in Alexandria, maybe he lived somewhere in a Jewish community, perhaps.
Sure.
But this was all a part of the Roman Empire, and there were provincial governors.
Right.
The entire government and the entire the entire world that lived and died under the Caesars was different from today.
It is.
One of the biggest things that did not exist back then, though, was this concept of social services. Right. If you dared to throw a rock at a Roman soldier, you would be hanging on a cross by that afternoon.
Right.
There is no comparison between the ancient world's view of justice and the ancient world's view of borders and cultural assimilation. Mm-hmm. And let me go ahead with this one, because leftists are so fond of these passages in the Old Testament, except when it's talking about homosexuality. But like, for example, when someone wanted to go and reside within Israel, if you were, certainly there's hospitality, certainly there's a way in which you treat the foreigner and the stranger. Mm-hmm. But what they fail to recognize is that didn't allow you to bring paganism in. Mm-hmm. You had, in order to live there as a citizen and to be recognized as such, you had to take on the Abrahamic covenant, which the first thing is the sign of circumcision, the removal of the male foreskin, and then you had to become Jewish.
Right.
You had to convert to the religion of Abraham.
You had to assimilate.
You had to assimilate.
Right.
That is not what the United States currently requires, but it does require for you to be a constitutional citizen.
Absolutely.
I would say in the backdrop of that, it's Christianity. But the problem, though, is that today, most people would say that if you talk about naturalization or assimilation, well, you're being a racist.
Yeah.
so it's viewed through the prism of cultural appropriation
and social justice. What's interesting about that, again, trying to equate Jesus and his parents using legal means by which to leave where they were to go to Egypt as a apples to apples comparison with someone who's illegally crossing a border coming into our nation, and then again I still go back to this because the imagery is so vivid of waving the flag of the nation that they fled, and no desire to assimilate, no desire to pick up the customs, and then to demand rights and privileges of citizenry is absolutely unthinkable.
Right,
it's absolutely unthinkable.
So these are the abuses of Western freedom. And somewhere along the way, we stopped enforcing laws. So there's all kinds of laws on the books that already exist, but we stopped enforcing them.
Right. And Democrats and Republicans took advantage of that.
Okay. So I'm glad you brought this up because this is really important. It is in our forthcoming Theology of Politics on mass deportation. But there has been a betrayal by both Democrats and Republicans, and betrayal not just of voters, but of the American citizen.
Yeah, absolutely.
They have betrayed their own country in favor of something else, in favor of either the economic interest of Wall Street that wants to treat the United States like an economic zone, that wants access to cheap labor. It could also be the betrayal of a political class that is looking for a replacement population as they continue to shed voters who are disillusioned by left-wing politics. They want to quickly refill the ranks. This is exactly what Biden-Harris administration did. Yeah. They want to refill the ranks with new voters. Yeah. And they want to, right before, for example, a national census is taken, they want to be able to say, this congressional district has this many people living in it. Yes. Never mind that they're illegal. And so we need more representation, more districting, more electoral votes.
Absolutely. And all of this at the cost of both the citizenry, the voters, and really it has no real benefit to the people that are being taken advantage of. Because again, you mentioned this earlier, they're slave labor.
That's right.
Right? They're beholden to whoever's paying them a paycheck and whatever they're willing to pay them in order to stay here, or else they could be deported. Right.
Right.
And so they're gonna do exactly what they're told. They're gonna take and receive whatever dollar amount they're being willing to pay. So again, companies and corporations are taking advantage of this, and Republicans are happy about that, or at least willing, or are at least willing to say very little about it, right? And then Democrats, like you said, are looking to have a voter class replacement, a victim class, if you will, that will simply stay dependent upon the government dole for the free resources that government provides.
Since 1971, Liberty University has had one mission: training champions for Christ. We've been at this for a while, and in the shadow of the Blue Ridge Mountains, we have grown to be a global force. Today, Liberty runs over 100,000 students around the globe, studying across 15 colleges and schools. And, among them, over 30,000 military students. Across 700 programs of study, we train as one: nurses, artists, business leaders of the future and today. Together, we work to give back through service trips, local community work, and over 500,000 volunteer hours per year. And we play just as hard as we study, with 20 NCAA athletic programs and 40 club sports teams. So, who are we? We are Liberty University, and we train champions for Christ.
So I want to differentiate here the difference between sort of the chamber of commerce, like Mitt Romney, Koch brother wing of the Republican Party, versus the populist movement of MAGA. Right. That you're talking about middle class Americans who are small business owners, Main Street America. They do not get bailouts. Yep. They're paying a heavy price to import goods. They're paying a heavy price when it comes to the cost of labor. They pay all of the taxes. Yes. The biggest tax burden in the United States is still Main Street USA, small town business owners. They're paying upwards of 65, 70, 75% of all the tax. And they're competing with these big massive conglomerates that have all kinds of access when it comes to foreign labor and visas. I'll just say this. In the abrupt departure of Vivek Ramaswamy, there was an early debate, and I'm talking about from the Trump administration.
Sure, yeah.
And I like Vivek, but one of the early arguments was how Vivek was making sort of his appeal. He's throwing populism and MAGA under the bus. He was making fun of Boy Meets World. No one needs that violence, by the way. Making fun of an old ABC show that I grew up on TGI Friday.
I was right there with you.
Yeah. And so, like, come on, like, why are you making fun of Boy Meets World? Like Corey and Topanga, that was the best couple ever. That was the best couple ever. And so, like, he's making fun of that. I'm like, what are you doing? This is the base. And so he's attacking that, but he's talking about, low expectation Americans who are mediocre. Who don't achieve for a lot, that, there are all kinds of immigrants who are hungry, they're humble, they're willing to work, roll up their sleeves. I don't dispute that exists, but the problem too, however, is that where are these low standards coming from? Enforced education standards by, our public education system.
Right.
There's all kinds of failures of opportunity here, right? And so the problem is that when a corporation has a bag full of money, they can then reach for a work visa, hire a foreign worker, pay them less, and they're not having to pay the same tax rate because they have benefits, there's kickbacks to hiring an American citizen.
Right.
And they know that.
Right.
And so I think that, and I say this, Vivek, who has aspirations to become governor of Ohio, that kind of comment that he made regarding foreign workers could come back to bite him.
Yeah.
Well, I like Vivek.
I do too. I do too. I enjoy. I'm glad that he's opened up conversations for audiences who haven't really heard from a Republican, and particularly one who's willing to defend the wide range of issues that Vivek is willing to speak about. But I still see the case being made that the conditions under which someone arrives it should be the reason why we allow them in. In other words, if they were hardworking, if they they had a mom and a dad, they had a they had a poor upbringing, that's the reason why they should be allowed to come in. And the reality is that there's a process by which people enter a country legally.
Right.
And countries around the world have this very same process. And so it's no different here. And we've got to keep that in mind as we're dealing with these issues and situations. The other thought that I have as it relates to that is being here is a privilege. It's absolutely a privilege. It's not a right that everyone gets to enjoy.
That's right.
And we've got to remember that and think about that and be willing to defend that. We haven't talked about that very much at all in our conversations. And evangelicalism has all but abandoned that idea.
That's the other thing. I mean, going back to this idea of rights, positive versus negative. You go back, I know you've looked at this book, you've written on it, Christopher Caldwell's book, The Age of Entitlement, and the social justice movement and all the social theories that came out of 1960s civil rights movements. Essentially created two Americas. It
did.
And Christopher Caldwell talks about this so clearly. They're the kind of America of the negative rights, so to speak, the rights of the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness.
Right.
The right essentially free from government interference to go and eke out a living.
Right. Make something of yourself.
Make something of yourself.
Yeah.
The American dream and these things not being infringed. Right. Free speech, freedom of conscience, all of those things. But these are not positive rights. It's not a right to.
It's not a guarantee.
It's not a guarantee to a certain kind of education. Right. The hammock policies of social welfare, where it's not a leg up, where you stand up on your handout. It's a handout,
right.
and people want to live the basically universal basic income.
Yes.
This was the kind of thing that Andrew Young promoted back in 2020 when he was running. People out of Palo Alto, they want to create a circular economy where essentially they just guarantee a bunch of people a certain standard of living. The reason immigration is so costly, illegal immigration, is because people coming from other countries that don't have skills have violated those laws. And we know of cases in Colombia and Venezuela where some of the worst people, they emptied out their prisons, they can't take care of them anymore, pushed them into the United States.
Yep.
Those guys are not going to go get a job at Walmart or Home Depot.
No.
They're not going to go work at loading docks. Right. They're not going to go work in these distribution warehouses at Amazon. These guys are people that are going to essentially come and live in the United States, and they're either going to rob,
Right.
kill, maim, you name it, or they're going to take advantage of certain social services that exist, but they're not here to work.
Now, the crazy part about that, Ryan, is we've seen the end result of this. You can look at Europe, you can look at France, you can look at Germany, you can look at some of these places where those ideas have been adopted, and mass immigration has followed, and social services abound for these folks, and they're literally living off of the government. You talk about the book, The Age of Entitlement. That's exactly what these people are living. They're living their best life now in parts of Europe and around the world, and we're seeing the same thing in places like Michigan, where there massive immigration that's taken place. Many of them from Muslim nations, from Muslim countries, and they've literally taken over the places. Dearborn, for example, doesn't even represent anything that we would recognize as American. I was looking at video from places up there earlier this week, and it looks like a Muslim nation.
You import the third world, you become
the third world.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about this because there's a critical shift, somewhere between 1924 and then 1965. And this is in the wake of like civil rights. United States is changing its orientation. And so like a lot of things came as a result of the Civil Rights Act, and we get into the whole thing of color, creed, religion,
Right.
you name it.
Right.
There's a lot of things that changed under President Johnson. And this kind of in the wake of the civil rights movement.
Right.
The orientation of the United States is different. We're becoming a more open nation.
Right.
We're becoming a far more tolerant nation.
Right.
We're becoming a nation that is allowing people to come from various parts of the world that were non-traditional, non-Western. And when you think about cultural assimilation, the challenge is, no longer are these nations going to be like nations. These are not Western in orientation. They don't have a similar understanding of human rights, similar commitments, even faith commitments. And so all of a sudden now you have the 2/3 world, the lower, lower third parallel line or whatever, essentially the third world.
Sure.
African nations, India, South America, and other parts across the earth. And that on its face is not a bad thing per se, but when you start to realize the gap. So imagine, we just dealt with this more recently, but we had a number of immigrants coming from Haiti by design. So the Biden administration was bringing in thousands and thousands of immigrants from Haiti. That is a culture, that is a third world country. It is a failed nation. I'll be very clear. Not all cultures are equal.
No, they're not.
Everyone is made in the image of God.
Yep.
But what a culture values,
yes.
What it is oriented around, what it celebrates and champions, what it thinks is evil, what it thinks is good, all of those things matter. When you import people from certain parts of the third world, you're bringing in paganism.
You are.
You're bringing in certain practices that are outlawed. Animism.
Yeah.
And so there's a spiritual aspect of that Christians should be very concerned about. And then on a practical scale, every American would care about this, Christian or non-Christian. Where, for example, we recognize that ducks at a park are not food. Ducks at a park belong in the water. They're part of the ambient beauty of creation, and all taxpayers pay for that. They are not. This is not where you go get your groceries. And not kidding. And maybe some people would laugh at that, and it seems kind of funny, but it's not.
No.
They absolutely would. They look at that and say, "Oh, this is a buffet."
Right.
And you say, well, how is that possible? That's the culture, the custom.
What's happened, I think, Ryan, that you're talking about, you come out of civil rights, you come out of a time where blacks were looked at and viewed through a particularly racial lens. I hate using that terminology, race, because we're all one human race made up of multiple ethnicities. But the reality is you come out of that time period and people are hypersensitive to issues of quote unquote race, right? Color of skin. What they're conflating in that process is not simply ethnicity. They're conflating ethnicity and culture, right? Simultaneously.
Right.
And so as a result, what happens is you have to now embrace not just a person's ethnicity, but you have to embrace their culture as well, because if you don't, then you're considered racist,
right,
or xenophobic.
That's right.
And the reality is people of different levels of melanin are all equal in the eyes of God. But man, what we do, which is what culture is, the culture is all about what you do. It's not who you are. It's what you do. It's the acts that come out of your upbringing, out of your surroundings.
That's right.
Those are very different. And as Christians, we need to know that, think about that, and understand that these folks aren't connected to a biblical worldview.
Yeah.
And we also need, from a standpoint of anthropology, to be able to separate the imago Dei, regardless of ethnic makeup, right? And say that's a value. But man, I can make real judgments about someone's culture and say that culture is a bad culture, or that culture is not conducive to American culture, or that culture does not work in our Judeo-Christian environment that we create here. And I know people hate the Judeo-Christian piece, but the Christian environment, the Christian country that we founded.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think, and so I want to articulate this just for clarity, is the 1965 Immigration Act signed by Lyndon Baines Johnson. It abolished the national origins quota system. The quota system is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about Western kind of like nations versus the third world.
Right.
And then prioritizing family reunification over skills-based entry. Very critical, because what happened, and again, age of entitlement, it changed the orientation to being more about it doesn't matter what you're bringing.
Right.
What skills are you bringing?
Right.
How are you going to help build this country?
Doesn't matter.
Are you an innovator?
Right.
What are you bringing that is of value?
Right.
Right. No longer does that matter. It's just you're a body.
Yeah.
You're a warm body.
Yep.
Just bring them on over.
Yep.
And so that changed. So this act flooded the U.S. with unassimilated migrants and transformed our demographic forever.
It did.
And so that was 1965. So I just want to be clear. We're 60 years into
that process.
And how people think or assume that should be done.
So we can see the fruit of that on the streets, right? In LA, we can see the fruit of that in sanctuary cities, right? Where migrants have flooded overwhelmed systems, overwhelmed structures, and based upon the benevolence of some governor who gets some kind of a kickback, the people that live there absolutely suffer under that kind of rule.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the challenge is even with that, and I want to go back to the example of Haiti. I want to go back to the example of animism and paganism. There are certain religious practices that are absolutely not permitted, not even under First Amendment protections, because that is not considered free expression or free exercise. And so if, for example, some people say, you don't understand, my values, I cherish this, and what I really believe is part of my religion and my religious practice, I should be able to sacrifice animals. Let's just say something like that. Right. Or at the very least, or worse, human sacrifice. That should not be permitted. And when we're talking about bringing people from other parts of the world, and this is the naivety of modern Americans, especially modern Christians, because of the Disneyfying of things, we kind of live in a cartoon world. We don't even understand nature. So animals that are free roaming in the wild are actually going to defend themselves and in some cases kill you. Right. In Disney World, you sing to them and you can pet them and all of that. Right. And so the problem, though, with our view of things is we don't understand other cultures. Right. And we don't understand. So most Americans don't understand Gaza. Right. They don't understand Haiti. They don't understand other parts of the world. So...
And we're in such a bubble we don't have to.
We don't have to.
We really don't. Yeah.
So there are limits to what are even allowed legally. And one of the things I'm trying to I'll get to this point and I'll go ahead and make a straight line. When we're talking about naturalization and assimilation, people who are bringing into this country and importing their religion And in particular, I was thinking about mosques. I was thinking about, creating autonomous zones and chartered cities where they build these walls and enclaves where you say, well, we're going to try to enact Sharia here.
Right.
And a lot of people say, oh, no, that could never happen. They're like, oh, whoa, wait. Disney, for over 40 years, enjoyed special legal protections and legal status. We have all kinds of emissaries. We have people that have diplomatic immunity that live in the United States. There's all kinds of ways in which people try to carve out certain kinds of legal protections and special privileges using money and other kinds of political favors and influence to do it. To think that can't be done in the United States is
it's naive. It's naive at worst.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to be. I'll say this as a Christian. I was concerned many years ago at the Southern Baptist Convention, the Florida Southern Baptist Convention. A pastor was raising the issue about a mosque in New York City. I understand what his concern was. And I absolutely don't think that's easily just ruled out and dismissed and saying, well, no. The Constitution, if we can tell a mosque where to go, we can tell Christians where to go. That's not exactly 100% true or accurate. That is flattening how the law works. You can absolutely tell a Muslim you can't practice Sharia because it's unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
But in the UK, their political system is being so hijacked and manipulated.
Absolutely it is.
100 Sharia courts exist right now today.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane.
20 major metropolitan cities in the UK, 20, have Muslim mayors. They're 7% of the population right now, and the country is basically surrendering. They're terrified. There are certain parts of London that you can't go because they're not being policed, and people can have their way. These are crime kingpin type things, but they can absolutely have their way. Police are terrified. Politicians are terrified, and they don't. It's more likely you would be arrested in Hyde Park for preaching the gospel as a Christian than a Muslim imam or a cleric who might say Allahu Akbar and bully and terrorize citizens.
It's that's insane. That's what I meant by all it requires for anyone to know what the fruit of this thing is to look at what's happening in Europe.
That's right.
Christians at one time surrendered all rights. And in an effort to embrace globalism, in an effort to embrace, the idea that we're to love everyone and allow others to come in, have really surrendered their entire country and system to a foreign entity, foreign from a standpoint of nationality, but also foreign from a standpoint of religious faith and belief and practice.
That's right.
And if we're not careful. The argument I'd make is that's already happening in the United States.
It is.
It's absolutely.
Minneapolis is an example.
Houston's another example.
Yes.
There are other states around the country that are dealing with these issues, and what usually happens is we wake up too late. We wake up after all of the power plays and the political maneuvering has taken place, and then we realize, we should have done something about that. And again, the piece that we're putting out is an effort to stem that, right? For Christians to get back to the Bible, open up the Word of God, rightly divide it, and then stand on the solid foundation of that truth.
Yes.
In an effort to be compassionate where it's necessary, but understand justice, and compassion doesn't just swing one way.
Right.
Be compassionate for the Lake and Rileys of the world.
That's right.
Right. Be compassionate for the citizens who are overrun, but their systems are overrun by folks entering the country illegally. All those kinds of things have got to be considered.
We're in a truth-starved world, and a lot of times Christians need sometimes a leader. Someone who has a platform to give them permission, to give them permission and to say, that's never felt right. But I've always been afraid to speak up about that. Well, we're trying to give people permission, and to understand this topic better, to approach it biblically, I'm not saying that it's an anything goes type of approach. We recognize the Imago Dei in every single man, woman, and child. And so even as I'm talking about, and I want to be careful to say this, going back to the Haitian, the Venezuelan, the Colombian, yes, the image of God is in every single one of them. And so we've got to better define what the role of the state is.
Absolutely.
And what is the role of the Christian or even Christian community or the church. Yeah. And so I think this is a good point then to step into something where we talk about, because this is in our forthcoming treatment here in Theology of Politics.
One thing I want to add before you do that is as we're talking about distinctions between legal and illegal immigration.
That's amen.
Right?
100%.
But we want to do a better job of cleaning up the legal immigration systems so that people that we want to be here can be here.
That's right.
But the illegal immigration, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yep.
And we need to treat it differently.
So even, very, very good point, even in the sense in which going back to migrants that were given temporary status, they were invited here, they were brought in here. The Biden administration did that. That was their mess. I'm not saying that entitles everyone to stay here.
Right.
It was a mistake. It can be fixed. People can be sent back. They can even be sent back to their home country better off than when they left. There's no reason to say that couldn't happen. But the issue is that I'm not saying that everyone who came here illegal.
Right.
And even in that sense, that doesn't necessarily mean they should stay.
Right.
The Biden administration was doing something entirely different. I do believe that the replacement theory is an accurate one, that this was a political move and how they were counting populations across the United States. So I do want to get into this. So when it comes to the scriptures, one of the things we have to understand is the Bible affirms, and these are category errors that happen all the time.
Right.
People detest Christian nationalism when it's about Christians trying to enforce Christian morality on issues of marriage, on issues of faith, on issues of, say, upholding the Ten Commandments and having them recognized at the state level. The left hates Christian nationalism, but the kind of Christian nationalism they love is the kind of Ron Sider, everyone needs to be a socialist.
Right.
We need to, take the Olivet Discourse, strip it out of its context, but we need to do what Walter Rauschenbusch wanted and promote a social gospel. Right. We need to have open borders. We need to have U.S. aid pouring into Christian compassion ministries, not sending missionaries, mind you.
No, to solve root causes,
Yeah.
whatever those may be.
That's right.
Right.
So not sending missionaries necessarily to Haiti, not sending missionaries to Venezuela, not sending missionaries to Darfur, but instead bringing Darfur and Haiti and Venezuela here.
That's a great point.
Right? And so you notice they never want to do that. They never actually want to go to Iran.
Right.
And they never want to go to Palestine. Instead, they want to virtue signal that here.
Yes.
So, okay, the Bible affirms the legitimacy of nations, the borders, the rule of law. God made one man from one man every nation of mankind. You touched on this earlier. Romans 13,
right?
Classic. The government exists primarily to protect citizens.
That's exactly right.
So
from evil,
right? Promote righteousness,
absolutely,
and at the same time punish
evildoers.
So It's a twofolder.
Yes.
And this is, by the way, every pastor got this wrong during COVID, almost, except for John MacArthur, Jack Hibbs. I want to praise our friends. You and Daryl got it right. There were others that got it right, but these were the minority positions that were out there.
Yep.
Romans 13 is not the government gets to do everything it wants. The government is a servant of the Lord.
Servant of the Lord. And
the government has to, the requisite here in the model of what Paul is talking about, even as he's writing at a time in which he's under Roman government.
Right.
But the responsibility of that government as a servant of the Lord is to promote righteousness and punish evil.
Yes.
And when evildoers in that context should be afraid.
Yes.
And so when the righteous are the ones being harassed, when the righteous are the ones that are being put down, locked down, arrested, incarcerated, fined, taxed, all of that, and those who commit evil go scot-free.
Yeah, that's evil government.
That is evil government.
Yeah.
And so that is a subversion of the truth.
It is.
And righteous citizens should absolutely bring that government into accountability. And I would say through first through a vote.
Yes.
But then in other times it has to be righteous civil
disobedience.
Disobedience.
It does. It is. This is about sphere sovereignty.
Right.
Right. And when you're talking about churches and the role, especially during the COVID period, government was trying to say that what churches could and couldn't do, when they couldn't worship. The only one that tells churches, Christ's bride, what to do is the Word of God.
Right.
Right. And so when government intervenes in that, that's a point at which there needs to be a pause, a halt, to say no, this far and no further. Right. Mm-hmm. And we have a responsibility to ensure that that's the case. We do have a responsibility to submit to governing authorities, but that goes for its citizenry and those who are trying to commit unlawful acts against government, right?
That's right.
So they have a responsibility as well to abide by the law of the sovereign nation that they're trying to enter, and that's not what's happening.
No other nation has shown greater restraint when it comes to exercising the law than the United States.
Absolutely.
No other country. And so you look at FBI crime statistics when it comes to police shootings, when it comes to American citizens dying at the hands of law enforcement accidentally, but in the performance of their duty.
Yep.
And those statistics are consistently low compared to any other nation. You have to bribe, in many cases, if you go down to Mexico, you have to bribe the federales.
Right.
You have to bribe the police and the judges for protection. Bribing is a part of doing business.
Right.
Bribing is a part of the widow's plea for justice.
Right.
And so that has been something that is a consistent theme in other nations where there's a breakdown of law and order.
Yeah.
So in the United States, just recently, and this is insane, that this goes back to Romans 13. So you have ICE, immigration and customs enforcement agents who are going through California and going through New York, and you have American protesters, we think, we assume, throwing rocks, at the very least, throwing objects, projectile objects to break damaged vehicles, and in some case harm federal agents in the performance of their duty.
Right.
Trump actually had to give an executive order to say, if that happens,
we're going to use the law.
You have to stop the vehicle, get out, make those arrests, put those guys in jail. I know they're all cowards. We know they're cowards. And they'll probably stop that because if they have to face consequences. But that's to show you just how far it's come.
It's the entitlement culture.
That's right.
That's the entitlement culture. The entitlement culture just has the belief that those who've entered illegally have a right to be here. And no one, especially government, federal government, has the role of protecting its citizenry or taking these lawbreakers, rounding them up and sending them back to their country of origin.
That's right.
And so they don't believe that. And as a result, they are the point you're making is brilliant because and that's how far we've gone.
Right.
We have gone so far off of the beaten path, off of truth, away from righteousness, that we're defending evil.
Yes.
We're defending the wicked. We're defending the lawbreaker while having no compassion for those who've suffered under the hand of these lawbreakers, suffered under the violent acts that have been committed against them, even to the point of death.
Yeah.
There's no care. There's no compassion. I think about the ladies on The View. They had nothing to say about the Lake and Riley Act.
Right.
They had nothing. There was not a tear shed for those kinds of situations. What they see is, that's the politicization of a bad situation.
Right.
Like it was like almost as if it was an oopsie. Right, like a one-off, and when you bring to their thought process, no, this is happening over and over and over again. There's still no compassion, and there's still passion on the side of encouraging more of the same kind of behavior from people who are entering the country illegally.
So you're looking for a university that's perfect for you, a school that has anything you could possibly need.
Anything?
You want a place that has the programs you want to study, and maybe a few more, just in case you change your mind.
I think I'm going to sign up for the fashion design program.
All right. A place with state-of-the-art facilities. I mean, look at this campus.
And who doesn't love big-time sports?
And great recreational activities.
Okay, now we're on a roll. Somewhere you can hike, slide, strike, shoot, climb, eat, and most importantly, eat. You want a place that takes you to space? Okay, maybe not, but we can teach you how to fly, or pastor a church, or run a business. And all that with a great view? Yeah, I think I know a place.
Yes. So 2 cases. There was a bishop, Catholic bishop, I think it was out in maybe San Francisco in Gavin Newsom's state, just maybe a week or 2 ago, had basically said that we're not going to meet for mass any longer for fear of federal agents disrupting our services. And making these arrests that, and so in so many words, what he was saying is we won't meet for church anymore.
Right.
Okay. Now think about the opposite happened during COVID.
Yeah.
You could, the arrests were being threatened, fines, jailings, all of that. And John MacArthur is saying, and others are saying, we're going to meet for church. And now they're saying, no, because of this, we're going to shut down our community, our faith community. I'm thinking, well, wait a second. If you're standing on truth, why wouldn't you just do it boldly? Be a Daniel in the moment.
Right.
But here's the irony, Virgil. So literally what he's saying is those who are here illegally, who do not have a right, who broke the law to enter the country, I'm going to go ahead and shut down our church, not meet, in order to protect those who have violated the sovereign laws of that country.
Yeah.
Okay. There's another case. I think it was a Southern Baptist pastor at a church in, it was in Tennessee. I know the name of this one. I'm probably not going to, for the sake of our podcast, mention his name. But essentially, he had shared before the congregation
I remember
that
this.
ICE could come in at any point and disrupt the service. And I'm like, look, based on how, so maybe a Christianity Today subscriber, maybe somebody was getting their talking points from the Dispatch or from Russell Moore's basement. But like that individual is committing spiritual malpractice.
Absolutely.
Because he's actually from a pulpit and from a place of authority is actually saying spreading the fears and the lies and the propaganda of the left. That is not happening. There has not been a case of that actually happening. And that's completely irresponsible. And what is, I think the real outrage is that this is a Southern Baptist church. You're smarter. You know this. You're smarter than that. You can read.
You almost expect mainline Christianity, and I put that in air quotes because most of the mainline denominations are so far off of the beaten path. But you kind of expect that from kind of what you see in mainline Christian circles. The idea that the God that they serve is not the God of the Bible, but the God of the immigrant, right? That they're actually worshiping at the altar of social justice, rather than anything that representing biblical Christianity.
That's
right. So you kind of expect to see them do those kinds of things and shut down churches. Why? Because you don't have to. The God of the Bible doesn't deserve to be worshipped if the bigger God of immigration can't be served. And so that you see that happening on that end. When it comes to a Southern Baptist pastor, it just shows how embedded and how pervasive the whole social gospel actually is. How social justice since 2020 has permeated so much of culture that the idea that the highest order is the victim, the one that should be served is who, and it's not who's officially been victimized, right?
Right.
It's the one who we've determined based upon some virtue signal is the
Right.
person that is the victim. That's the person of the highest order.
And this is Marxism. This is the Marxist dialectic, because if you take somebody who's an innocent girl like a Laken Riley and you say, well, that person is the oppressor class, clearly,
Right.
because she's white, she's female, cisgender, you
Right.
name it,
Right.
These are the very people that the left vilifies.
Right.
And so that you dehumanize that
Right.
person.
So you can justify all kinds of behavior toward
all
them.
kinds of evil,
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm surprised that just happened. She deserved X, Y, and Z.
Right.
These other things,
Right. She's had white privilege all her life, so what's the big deal?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so you actually heard a lot of that over the whole Iran and Israel situation, even more recently. Who does and doesn't deserve justice?
Yeah.
Okay, so I do want to talk about this other aspect too, and these are all the abuses. We've talked a little bit about this already, but the abuses in the Old Testament. So Exodus 23 verse 9, commands Israel not to oppress the sojourner. But these were not these were not people in the modern sense, right, who
illegally entered the country.
Right. And invaded national sovereign borders, or could take advantage of Israel's welfare programs because they didn't exist.
Right.
Right. This wasn't an entitlement.
Yeah, this should be. I mean, we should be clear-eyed about this.
Yeah.
Right. This shouldn't be confusing. This isn't. Man, I need a doctorate or DMin or an MDiv to figure this one out. Like, you can look at sojourners and understand that they were those who had been with Israel, had come alongside Israel, had adopted their culture, had adopted their nation's ideas, had assimilated into the culture, were a part of who they were. Israel didn't have these laws and boundaries and borders at the time, and so all of this was a part of who they were as a people. So the idea that these are somehow illegal aliens who entered the country, through whatever means, and don't desire to assimilate, have no desire to really participate in the cultures, in the nation's culture. It's foreign. That idea is foreign to Scripture.
And this is not Corrie ten Boom like hiding from the Nazis. No. This is not in any way in any way related to that. And by the way, false equivocation abounds. The inability to math this out ethically is a big part of the leftist tactics. And so when you try to say, for example, during the Holocaust, Jews that were being housed and hidden, they were being exterminated. And this was their country, their rights, their property, everything was being stripped from them. They were being dehumanized. They were being experimented on. They were thrown into internment labor camps. They were being gassed. They were being thrown in furnaces. Like there is no way you can compare that in terms of Christian obligation to disobey the law, like the Hebrew midwives who disobeyed Pharaoh. There is no equivalency between that and what we're talking about here. Matthew, we did talk about this in Matthew chapter 2, the refugee, the whole Jesus is an undocumented migrant. I also think about the Good Samaritan, Luke chapter 10, verses 25 through 37. Even in that case, the purpose there is answering the question, who is my neighbor? In the context had to do with the Pharisees. He's asking that question. And the Samaritan was the one who was exercising neighborly love. It has nothing to do, again, with illegal immigration.
Nor does it have anything to do with a government structure that extracts money from every person, from every Samaritan, in an effort to have a resource available for everyone that falls on hard times.
Yep. That's the kind of Christian nationalism, though, that the left wants. And that's the kind of standard they want to enforce. So long as it's that, they're all for that. And by the way, that is taking a page out of sort of not biblical ethics, but trying to to strip something from its context here and place it over and say, hey, we're going to force these standards on everyone.
It's biblical eisegesis at its worst. Right.
That's exactly right. So, okay. So the main thing that I want to get to now is, can it be done? And if it can, it must. And I think absolutely can be done. And I believe that it must be done.
Mass deportation.
Yeah. So
it has been done.
That's right.
We've just talked about. I mean, we've been talking about how it had been done in 1925. We talked about how it had been done, and at least looked at in 1954.
Right.
Right. We talked
under
about
Dwight D. Eisenhower.
Absolutely.
It happened. Just to clarify, real quick, where there was a mass deportation program. Ironically enough, even though we had DACA under Obama, there was deportation happening even under Obama. That was being enforced.
He was considered the deportation president.
He was, and he deported even more than George W. Bush. So it can happen, and the issue now is after the Big Beautiful Bill passed, $170 billion. By the way, that is more than than what is spent by the Russian government on the military. So you can finish a wall. You can hire 10,000 more ICE agents. You can, honestly, you can go buy more military planes and load them up. And in a humane way that is not devoid of compassion, you can actually pay people, and the administration's willing to do this, you can pay people to voluntarily deport
themselves,
Yeah. And like I say, they could return to their nation of origin better off than when they left.
Yes.
It is possible.
Yes.
So why it must be done. I think that's one of the things. So you think about, there is an existential threat.
Yes.
There's a threat economically.
Yes.
There's a threat to national security.
Yep. There's the rule of law.
Yes.
Right. There's the message that it sends to foreign nations. Right. You can't just come. What has it done to the border entries recently?
Right.
It's brought them all the way down to near zero. Right. There aren't nearly as many crossings. Why? Because of the policy that have been put in place.
Right.
That have told other countries and foreign nations that is not how we do business any longer.
That's right.
And as a result, you either need to stay in your place of origin. And again, if there's some status, some kind of situation that requires someone to seek asylum, there's a process for that, right? And it's not just illegally crossing the border. So it does a variety of things. You mentioned the national security component, the cultural cohesion on our end, the rule of law as well. I mean, all those things have to be considered, and we've got to stop this age of entitlement that we see the fruit of in foreign-born individuals coming to our country, waving foreign flags from places that they've escaped from in an effort to be here.
Yes. The American worker, the American family. So one of the big things for years, I went back and I saw this video from 1992, the election of 1992, where George H.W. Bush lost that election because of the third and dark horse candidate, Ross Perot.
Yeah.
And Ross Perot warned about what would happen with NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, which, by the way, is now obsolete. Because thanks largely to President Trump, who drafted a new trade agreement based largely on fairness to the United States. But the NAFTA free trade agreement, Ross Perot said something that was prophetic in almost every way. He basically said that what would end up happening, you would destroy the American family, the American worker. You would lower essentially wages. It's not just that you would get goods at a cheaper level, but what would end up happening is the people who lost their jobs as a result, American wages would fall behind, and the country that was being built up through trade, through manufacturing, their wages would go up until finally America is a lot poorer and that other nation is a lot richer. And that's exactly what we did in China. It's what we did in other countries as well.
And then look at what happens. These countries are not friendly to America.
No.
Right? They're building their infrastructure in an effort to thwart American dominance.
That's exactly right.
And we pay for it.
And we pay for it.
Yeah.
And so going back to the Somalian who's running for mayor in Minneapolis, this idea that people will love us all the more by us showing that kind of quote unquote compassion without justice, that's a myth.
It is.
This goes back to Disney. The bear in the woods will eat you.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how much you sing to that bear by nature is going to eat you.
Absolutely.
But people have lived in this Disneyfied culture for far too long.
Absolutely.
So economic justice is really about protecting the American worker, the American family, and I think that's the populism of this MAGA sort of movement.
It is.
And it's recognizing, and again, I'm not trying to be partisan here. I'm really not. I'm talking about the practicality.
Right.
Because people have hurt for far too long.
Yes.
And in many ways, it is robbing the United States of wealth and resources and everything else.
It doesn't have to be about political party. You can look at the last 60 years. We talked about it from the civil rights era. You can look at the last 60 plus years and see what's happened as a result, and determine we've got to. If you think nothing else, if you're not a Trump guy, if you're not a MAGA guy, if you're not, you can ask the question: how do we change the chaos that we currently have? And the reality is we have to do the kinds of things that we're talking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this mass deportation is necessary, and I think there's prudence here. I think there's biblical wisdom here. I think it is a keeping of the second greatest commandment. It is not throwing to the wind who is my neighbor.
Right.
But it's recognizing that we must love the Lord our God with our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourself. And so as Americans, and this was a question that was even posed to me even more recently, the whole question of birthright citizenship.
Right.
And I know that's a difficult question, but the misapplication this whole time, we've been talking about misapplication, abuse, and cultural confusion around these questions. The context in which birthright citizenship came was after the Civil War, and it was the descendants of American slaves.
Yep.
And what was happening was at that point, when the entire slave population was emancipated, the question is, well, what of their children?
Right.
And so what happens to them? And that's when that order was given. That's when that became an official U.S. policy. But since that time, so many things have changed, and all of the various abuses. And at that point, you didn't have a social safety net or a welfare program.
That's huge.
That's
huge.
That was a big difference.
Yeah.
And so what president, not necessarily an affectionate title, but anchor babies.
Right.
That title has been thrown around, and for decades and decades and decades, people would try to come into the United States, and to have
a
children,
child,
and to have a child
for the purpose of.
Yeah. And I'm not saying in every case that people didn't have good intentions in their own mind.
Sure.
But they broke the law.
Yep.
And that's how they got in.
Right.
And at the same time, it is why human traffickers, sex traffickers, you cannot think of anything more evil than that.
Right.
We're utilizing that same system
Right.
to smuggle children.
Absolutely.
And to come across the border.
Well, you mentioned it. It was what happened is they would come into the country, have a child. That baby would then be an American citizen based upon the idea there. And then what would eventually occur is at some point in time, the thought is if they can stay in the country long enough, they can eventually bring their entire family along with them, right? As a result. And so you had all of it was an illegal way of going about trying to enter the country when all that needed to be done and was required was a legal process for entering the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing, and I don't want to fail to mention this because it's a part of the discussion even now, but the idea of amnesty. Every generation, because we have this problem where we don't know our history and what happened. 1986, under Reagan, he signed into law an Amnesty Act, even back then, that gave amnesty to 3 million immigrants living in the United States. And the promise under that time, now he did, let me just explain. He was a Republican president, Democratic House and Senate, okay? Republicans actually didn't take over the House until 1994 under Newt Gingrich. That was like the first time since like the 1950s that they had a majority.
That was when I woke up.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And how much we've come, how far we've come as a country. And that's when Rush Limbaugh was hugely popular. And I miss him, by the way. But going back to 1986, we were hoodwinked. We were rolled. We got rolled as Americans because what the promise is okay, this is the one time we're going to do this. Right. It's the one time, and as a result of that, we're going to have much stricter policies, wagging the finger, the politician. Now, we're going to give you what's inside the cookie jar. Right. But you can't steal any more free cookies anymore. Right. Like this is over. And 40 years later, Republicans are going to try and get rolled again and do it again. And never mind, by the way, your home state originally in Oklahoma. Some of the worst culprits of this are your Christian Republican politicians. And I love them all. Right. But they're wrong on this issue. They're wrong on this issue.
Too much compassion.
Too much compassion, not enough justice. And so we get rolled time and time again on this. And I think we have to recognize we can't be Charlie Brown. This is that moment where you say, okay, fooled me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. But I think enough American voters are recognizing what's at play.
I think they are. I think they're waking up. I think they love what they're seeing from this current administration, from Trump. I also think what's interesting enough is Trump received the largest Hispanic vote. I think somewhere in the tune of 43% of Hispanics voted in favor of him, and knowing that one of the cornerstones of his policy was going to be what we did at the border. Those are folks who voted for him, who came here legally.
Right.
And they want to see the same kind of standard put in place. They don't want to have people looking at them as if they came here illegally when they followed a law and order in the process.
That's right.
Yeah.
So I kind of take away as we wrap, and I want people to go to standingforfreedom.com. I want them to subscribe.
Yeah.
I want people to
to read this piece.
You got to read it.
It's really good.
We're not proposing in mass deportation something that is inhumane, something that would dehumanize immigrants. We are not talking about people who are not made in the image of God. They are made in God's image. We are recognizing the justice of the issue. There is a rationality in this issue. We have to recognize that there is a scarcity of resources. We have to recognize that America for the longest time has been a hub when it comes to opportunity, but also lawlessness in order to get to it. And people have violated national sovereignty in order to get to the United States. We recognize that policies that have been abused for a long time, birthright citizenship being one of them, there needs to be all kinds of reforms.
Yes.
But mass deportation is actually a very sensible, given where we are right now, encroaching upon $40 trillion in debt.
Yes.
We recognize that this cannot go on in perpetuity.
No, absolutely. Every illegal crossing is an act that stands against the sovereignty of our nation. And a nation without borders can't stand.
Right.
So we have to do something.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I think the other thing is going back to something that was mentioned earlier. I think Christians who are listening to this, I want to encourage them to engage with this issue more carefully.
More thoughtfully, more biblically.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And no, I am not suggesting that we know everything.
No.
I'm not suggesting that. And so humbly, we submit this work, want people to read it and engage with it, but also to recognize that we need other voices out there that are not just contending for leftist causes.
Right. There's nobody saying what we're saying.
That's the problem.
There's nobody. There's no one making a biblical case for mass deportation.
That's the problem.
There isn't.
Yep.
And so that's why this is important.
That's right.
Yeah.
I just want to be very, very clear for anyone who's out there who's like got the dog whistle and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think Kenism is evil.
Right.
I am not arguing for ethno-nationalism
Right.
or something like that.
Neither of us would do that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So very, very clear at the very end of this. That's not the purpose of this.
Right.
This is about a sensible, rational strategy that acknowledges the love of God, the love of neighbor, and what is necessary at this moment
Absolutely.
of American history.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate, Virgil, your engagement on this issue. I think it's thoughtful. I hope it opens up more dialogue. And we're going to be doing more of this.
Yeah,
So I'm
this is
really
great.
excited.
I'm excited to be a part of it, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, God bless you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being a part of it.
Absolutely.
Hey, did you find this helpful? I hope you did. Please like and subscribe, share with a friend, and also go to standingforfreedom.com where you can find more content, articles, podcasts, and our Theology of Politics series, all at standingforfreedom.com.